Let's go! Let's cue the music!
Cue the music!
Cue the music!
Coming to you live from New York City, I'm Brian Teo. Joining me today from Green Bay, Wisconsin is Kevin MacLeod. Together, we'd like to welcome you to Composerish, where we discuss issues facing modern working composers. Sometimes. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing surprisingly well. Yourself?
Why do you say surprisingly?
It's been a weird week. My keyboard controller is fritzing on me. I've got the Contact 61, and it's got like two LCD screens, and the right LCD screen just sometimes fritzes out and goes to static. I'm like, well...
Wait, what? Why does it have two LCD screens?
They're just like side-by-side things next to the rotary controllers.
Huh.
Why does it have it? I don't know. They've been looking shabby for the last few months. They get all, not smoky, I guess, something like that, where it looks like there's like condensation on the inside of it or something.
Oh, yeah. That means like there's probably a seal that's been broken somewhere.
It's all, because I leave it on 24 hours a day, and so I think the backlighting might have just burned those screens out.
I didn't think that it would draw that much power.
I don't know. It still works as long as you don't mind. And I never really use the screen on the right anyway, because I don't use it like you're supposed to use it.
Yeah.
I don't use it with their DAW replacement. I use Logic, and then I just have a generic set that I set it to so that I can rotary control a bunch of things, and it works well.
I kind of wonder how many people work with janky MIDI controllers. Like my keyboard right now has a B flat that whenever I touch it, it just like ramps up to 127 velocity like right away. And so I always know I'm like, as soon as I touch it, it's gonna thwack it on the score, and then I'm gonna have to like take it down and post later on. But it's that one key every single time. But I'm not gonna replace it because I mean it's fine otherwise, and keyboards are expensive.
Yeah, I used to go through one M audio every 9 to 12 months. I had the Oxygens. I still have like 3 of them laying around here, which are broken in various ways. One of them has an octave that doesn't work. One of them has some keys that go to 127 and nothing under it. So I'm like, do I order a new one just to have a pretty screen? I don't know.
You know, their stuff is priced pretty aggressively low, but I think you get what you pay for in those regards, because I have a lot of M audio gear and it tends to last about as long as you'd expect it to.
Yeah. This Contact one was considerably more expensive than the M audio.
Yeah, so it's kind of sucks when your screen's going on the fritz then.
Screen's going on the fritz, but I've had it for a few years and I'm like, nah, this is just what you do.
Have you tried contacting customer support?
I have not. What are they're going to send me one and then I send this one back?
Or at the very least, sometimes they'll offer you a refurbished unit. They'll be like, you can send us that one back, and then we'll allow you to buy like a B stock one for cheaper at least. So you won't have to buy a completely new one.
That's entirely possible. Maybe I'll look into it.
I've been looking into like weighted key keyboards, like a full 88 sized one, and I just can't bring myself to spend the money. Yeah. There are ones that have like entire mechanisms in them, but they're bulky, they're really, really, really heavy, and they're also super expensive.
There is a YouTube channel. I wish I could remember the name of the guy, but he reviews all sorts of. He's a real pianist though. Like ooh, you're a real pianist.
Is it The Piano Forever?
Yeah, it's a young dude. And his reviews are like a half hour long sometimes. It looks super.
Oh, wow. Just on keyboards?
Just on one keyboard. Yeah, he'll go like, this is the Casio, and go after it.
I guess I've never really cared that much. I'm pretty terrible at playing things in live. Like, no matter what, I'm going to have to go back and edit things. So I think I could have the best MIDI controller in the world, and at the end of the day, it's not going to really make that much of a difference.
Speaking of being horrible at playing things in live, I complained to you last week that I don't have like good steel drums, and then you sent me an email.
Oh yeah, there was a sale. Spitfire is having their spring sale. That might be done by the time that this podcast publishes, actually. But yeah, the steel pans for like what, $50?
$58.
Okay.
$59. It was $60.
So you ended up getting them?
I ended up getting them, and I got the 8DO steel drums as well. Because I'm like, well...
were those on sale?
It was on sale also, yes.
As we established last week, that's the time to buy samples.
Yeah. So it's $50 for the 8DO ones. And now I can talk about which one's better.
Uh-oh. I think we know what time it is.
Yeah!
It's time for a sample shootout.
So these are all played in using actual mallets on the Pearl mallet station. controller.
Can you tell me a little bit about that, actually?
Yeah, so it's a MIDI controller that looks like a marimba. It's got the bars on it, and you can hit it with sticks. You can play it with your hands. It's a bunch of drum pads, just a pile of drum pads.
Oh, that's cool. How sensitive are they?
You can go very sensitive with it.
And I'm assuming you can also just thwack the shit out of it.
You can absolutely thwack the shit out of it. Yep. I mean, I've had mine for a couple years now, and some of the pads I think aren't reacting identically to their neighbors. And then I try it with a different patch, or like try it with my standard marimba patch. I'm like, nope, everything's fine. It was the samples that were
like it's like a round robin weirdness or something.
Yeah, weirdly striking.
Huh.
So
the steel pans.
Steel pans. My God, am I terrible at this?
Yeah.
My mallet technique has suffered over the years of collecting dust.
I think there's a reason why people end up studying this in like college, and they focus on like mallet instruments.
Yeah.
It does involve an awful lot of technique. So for any composer that's got like their own DIY studio or whatever, trying to be like, oh, I'm going to play this in live. It's like,
It's certainly, it is so much fun though, to just crank the monitors and just hammer on that. And it sounds wonderful and it's beautiful to play. And then you listen back to it and you're like, I sounded like that.
Yeah,
Oh.
I usually blame the software. Like, there's some weird timing issues going on here. I don't know, like Logic's really got to iron that out.
Yeah, it sounded great live, but listening back to it, there's some major problems.
I think that's why people suggest that for live instrumentalists, you should record your practice sessions, because like in the moment, a lot of times it's very difficult to listen critically. But if you listen back, you're like, that section is really bad. So you played in a bunch of stuff live.
Played in a bunch of stuff live.
How do you feel like these samples came out?
They stack up to each other almost identically.
Really?
They definitely sound different. I'm feeding the exact same MIDI into each file. But in the case of the fast file, I recorded that one on the 8DO. And in the case of the slow one, I recorded that original one on Spitfire. So the slow one sounds better on Spitfire, and the fast one sounds better on 8DO. But when you're playing them in live, they're really hard to tell the difference between the two. They feel very similar.
Well, let's. What do you want to listen to first?
Yeah, let's do the fast Spitfire one.
Okay.
All right, so what do you think of that?
I think it sounds great. And it's weird because I'm listening to these now in a different order than I had initially listened to them before we started recording this episode. And I remember thinking that the 8DO sample sounded really good, which we haven't heard yet. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking that the Spitfire samples sounded a little bit on the more distant side and kind of plinky.
Yeah, they're a little thinner. They don't have as much bass as the 8DO one.
Right, but when I'm listening to this without having listened to the other one first, it actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Let's listen to the other one quick.
Sure. Did you double this with like marimba or anything like that?
There is definitely a marimba in there.
Yeah.
In the band.
I think you can hear it in some of the clips that you sent me more than others. Like there's definitely times where like I think the steel pans take over, and then there are other times where I become more hyper aware that the marimba is actually there.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that one sounds good too. And to me, that sounds a little bit more full. It sounds bigger. It sounds a little bit more in your face.
Yep. And
the steel pan is not really a quiet instrument as far as I know. So I think my personal experience, whenever I hear them live, it's usually, it's so loud that I think that's more my experience with them. While Spitfire seems like it's more further back in a room somewhere.
Yeah, and that's the close mic position on that one.
Oh, that's the close mic position.
Yep. And I think there's a little bit of tree, like a 10% of tree mic.
Huh. As an aside, what shaking percussion are you using in that? Because it sounds really good.
Oh, that is from Cuba. It's a contact instrument.
Is it a loop or is it like an instrument that you programmed in?
It's an instrument you can program in.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I was thinking it was good because, I mean, hand percussion and especially shaker stuff like that is incredibly difficult to get to sound realistic when you're not actually controlling like the hits.
Yeah.
But that sounds pretty good. I'll check it out.
Yep. If you have Contact Ultimate, I think you might already have it installed.
I think I got it with Complete when I
yes.
bought it back in version 10 like ages ago.
It's in Complete. Oh,
so
hey, it is located inside Complete. And just for completeness, the bass is a Trillion upright bass.
Okay.
From
classic.
Oof. Long ago, but it still sounds fine.
It's still, I think, one of the best upright basses out there. I haven't been able to find anything that I like better.
Yeah.
I have my issues with that bass sample as well, but compared to all the other upright basses that I've tried, I think I still end up going to that one the most out of any of them for like non-classical stuff.
Yeah, and it's definitely better than just like loading up your orchestral pizzicato bass.
Oh yeah,
trying to fake that. Technically, it's the same instrument.
Well, yeah, technically. But I mean, I think in that case, usually there's like a whole section, right? Or are you talking about like a solo bass?
Yeah, just
performer?
like a solo bass pits. It's like, no.
Yeah, there's another one called, I think, like Pear Bass. And I don't remember. I think it might be Orange Tree Samples that makes that one.
Okay.
That one's okay too. But like, again, like if I could take like bits and pieces of all these different basses and sort of like mix them together, I could get my own ultimate bass. But also, I'm not the guy that's going to program this. So like, I'll just have to bitch about it on a podcast instead. Let's listen to some of these slow samples.
All right.
Let's do Spitfire first, I guess?
Yeah, let's do Spitfire slow.
So I think in this sample is where I definitely heard more of that plinkiness coming through.
Yeah.
You get more of like that sharp attack. It's less resonance. And I don't know if maybe that just has something to do with the register of the instrument.
Yeah, this is definitely played higher than the other piece by about fifth, sixth. So it's gonna sound tinier.
Yeah, I don't know steel pans well enough. Is that what happens?
Yeah, when they get up there, they get fragile and percussive and less tonal.
Okay. Let's take a listen to the 8DO sample. I might have a theory in why they play the way they do.
Okay.
But I'd like to hear your assessment first.
Okay, so first off, both of these come with the sample hits, and they also come with sampled rolls. None of these are using those sampled rolls. If you're like, ugh, the rolls on these sound awful, that's just me. That's the best I can do.
Okay, so don't blame the samples.
Don't blame the
people.
samples. Those rolls are all done manually, and I think they have enough round robins to sound pretty. They sound pretty good. They sound like they should. They're definitely doing what I asked them to do, not necessarily what I wanted them to do. Because
in context, I mean, I think that you could probably bury that in a mix too. Even with current performance, I think if it laid bare right now, you can notice a lot of inconsistencies in ways that are like it doesn't sound realistic. But if this was under some ADR or something, I think it'd be fine. Oh yeah, I think this will be fine for backgroundy stuff, and I'm going to get a lot better at these before I actually release stuff with them. So yeah, as it turns out, you can't learn how to play an instrument like in a day. So there's that. Yeah. No matter how much we try. But I did learn how to cheat. I started out playing everything with yarn wound mallets. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I can just play this with drumsticks. Yeah. And I have a lot better feel for drumsticks than I do for the weight distribution of a mallet. What made you decide to go with the yarn mallets? Because that's what you play a marimba with. Oh, a marimba, correct. Yeah. I thought, but with a steel pan, I would have thought they'd be more like like a rubber mallet or a stick or something. Yeah, they use like short, sticky things. So I guess using like a drumstick would be more in line with what you'd actually expect. Yeah, I think they're shorter and heavier than
And now, write in and tell me if you play steel drums, if you know anything about them.
Right. If you play steel pans, you can give us school us a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll invite you on the show to like give a little rundown of how they work
and why these things both suck.
I think with like especially with those rolls, like you really expect the stick to kind of kick back a little bit.
Yeah.
I say this having never played a steel pan in my life.
Yeah. Neither have I.
But I think that with like, if you do like rolls on a snare drum or whatever, like that bounce is kind of part of it. Like you get like a little bit of spring from the recoil.
Yeah, you should get some spring off the drum.
So sticks, that's a key to the technique.
Yeah, definitely when I go back into it. But when you use the sticks, the light sticks that I have roll really fast, so you got to be really careful with the pressure on them. Almost everything sounds like a press roll against those pads where you go.
Here's a question, and I don't know if you've experimented with this at all, but for the pre-recorded rolls, are you able to control the volume like as you play it?
Both of them have mod wheel volume.
That's great. So these, what's your assessment on these in general?
If you're looking for distant ambient, you can go with either one of them. If you're looking for close-up, the 8DO is a little better, and I'm going to say the 8DO is slightly better still because it includes samples for brushes and metal nails.
I had no idea that people played brush on the steel pan.
It's almost atonal. It's so much highs when you get that in there. You can tell that you're hitting different notes, but you'd use it more as a background percussion feature.
It seems like it's a very cinematic technique. I don't know. I wonder if that's classic to do that.
I'm pretty sure playing nails on it is also not classic. It's got a bunch of different kinds of samples. So.
I would have expected that sort of approach out of Spitfire more than 8DO for some reason.
Yeah.
They do like all their Hans Zimmer percussion ensembles and bucket ensembles and stuff like that. When do you think it would be appropriate for Spitfire then?
If you like the Spitfire interfaces and you're already like mixing in the world of Spitfire, yeah, the samples sound fine. They both of them crack when you hit them really hard, which is perfect for steel drum.
You want the instrument to fail.
Artfully fail when you smash it.
Which I probably would because I'd be so frustrated about how I couldn't play it. It's going to be a lot of note cracking. I was thinking about this. I get a sharper attack on the Spitfire, and I get more of like a beefier sound from 8DO.
Yep.
And you had mentioned that 8DO is better for the faster stuff, and Spitfire was more playable for the slower stuff.
They're actually both playable fast, and they're both playable slow. It's just the demos that I put together, I recorded one of them first.
Ah, I see.
And then I just copy-pasted the MIDI over, so it would sound, and I tried to make them sound as good as I can, in the hour that it took me to put that together. So
no, they sound great. I think Spitfire classically has like a little bit of like they record a little bit before the sound, and they trim their sample so they get all of the attack, which is what they say with their string libraries. A lot of times you're supposed to like play it in, cut the attack down. They have like I think it's like a tightness control or something.
Yeah.
And then you can play it in like that, and then you pull it back, and then you have to adjust the samples so they'll actually be in time. Because otherwise, if you quantize them to like where the downbeat is, they'll sound a little bit behind. So I wonder if they use that same approach for this to catch like all of that crisp attack. But the 8DO definitely sounds fatter to me.
Yeah.
And when I think steel pan, that is the sound that I think I'd probably want. So
now you know.
And now we know.
Now we know. And I also put it up against the Contact has a steel drum. And it's just awful. I am not even going to put demos out.
Yeah, I'm guessing they used, they didn't really do a lot of deep sampling with that one.
No. It might even be FM synthesis. I can't even tell.
You know where it's like an unusual place, or at least to me seemed like an unusual place to hear a lot of steel pan is in hip hop. I've heard a lot of steel pan in hip hop.
I was going to bring this up. I have not. I've heard people talk about steel pan in hip hop, but I've never heard any.
Well, you don't also listen to very much hip hop.
That's true. And not unless it hits like the top.
Right. I don't really listen to it much either, but if I go out on the few occasions, or at least back when I used to do that, like you'd hear like steel pan with beats every once in a while, like a lot of trap beats and stuff. But I drop a sample in here, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find anything that I can clear the rights to. So we'll just
That's the beauty of a podcast, is that nobody's listening.
Yeah, right.
Like literally, like Warner Music, they're not listening to this. They don't want to hear from us.
Really, the one person that is listening though is the person that could sue us and be like, wait, that's mine.
we won't be able to put it on YouTube, but we can absolutely talk about it. This is fair use. We're critiquing.
I think YouTube actually monetizes that though. You can't monetize it and put it on YouTube, but I think that you can put copyrighted material on YouTube.
You probably can.
They'll just like, they put their little advertisement in there then, and then all the money goes to whoever did your thing.
And whoever does the thing also has the rights to just pull it.
Yeah. I think that's why you can put covers of songs on YouTube, but it's more difficult to put them on Spotify. I actually went through this recently. You have to buy these special rights. So I ended up getting a license to put a cover on Spotify, which was separate from the one that I had to do to sell it outright on Bandcamp.
Oh, interesting.
And then I didn't really need one for YouTube, but I just added that to the clause of my streaming platforms or whatever for the Spotify thing, just in case, to cover my butt. At the end of the day, if you really want to like put up a cover somewhere, doing it legally is not super, super expensive.
I was going to ask about how much does this cost all in?
I licensed the song through the Harry Fox agency. It cost me $12.25 royalty fees, which I paid ahead of time. And that's for 100 downloads, digital distribution rights. And there's a $16 processing fee though. So all in, it ended up costing about $28.25.
Okay.
And I basically prepaid all the royalties. If I end up selling more than 100 of this cover, then I'll have to pay more money. I'll have to like renegotiate a deal. But that's it. And then I think it's $12 a year for Distrokid to handle all the streaming rights. So I don't have to worry about that. As long as I'm on top of that payment, it'll be fine. And that's regardless of how many people end up listening to it. That's just $12 flat fee.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad. A huge bulk of the price came from the people who were doing all the work for me. If I knew how to do the legwork, I think I could have knocked about $16 off that $30 price tag.
Okay.
The actual licensing fees were not that much, but the people doing all the things the right way were.
Tracking down the rights holder and getting them the money and whatever they do.
Exactly. And facilitating all that. And also, like, I kind of don't want it to have any fallibility. So there's peace of mind that comes with that as well.
Yep. It's like, hey, dude, I did the thing. I filled out the forms. I paid the money. Somebody else is going down for this one.
Right. So if I'm liable, so are you.
Yep. In non-music news, so the reason that I'm making this sort of islandy kind of music is because I need music for my Tiki bar,
which also came up last week.
I'm also building a Lego Tiki bar for my Tiki bar, which is fantastic.
It's a Tiki barception. Yeah. So you have like a Tiki bar within a Tiki bar.
Yeah. So anyway, I listen to a lot of steel drum music, island music that's available on YouTube. And it turns out like the thing that I had in my head, like the kinds of things that I recorded, aren't really real. Like those never existed. Like that mix between sort of like Cuban, Polynesian, Jamaican, like the stuff that I had in my brain. I'm like, oh, that never really happened.
In the 1960s, they used the dubious term exotica to describe that style of music, which is just an amalgamation of a lot of different cultures. And, white people at the time, they're like, oh, this is so exotic.
Yeah.
But exotic meant just anything other than like the Midwest.
Right. I mean, clearly my Tiki bar has like a wooden giraffe in it, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
But fits perfectly. So this is also, it's like, it's not based on anything real, but sounds like it could be.
Right. This is kind of like a really weird area that I think a lot of people have very strong opinions about. But I mean, there is this aesthetic to the style of music and style of design for Tiki bars and all that kind of stuff that sort of like crosses boundaries. And it's not faithful to any one sort of ethnicity.
Yeah.
But it's kind of become its own thing. And people trying to borrow what they thought was exotic at the time, they ended up accidentally creating a completely original thing, which is an aesthetic unto itself. I imagine it's still problematic for reasons, but I think there's also something to be said for it's just being able to be appreciated for what it is.
Yeah, it's hokey, fun, interesting, chill, exciting.
Right, almost like watching. So I've been rewatching Stranger Things recently, and the entire time I'm watching, I'm like, that's not what the '80s were like, especially in Indiana. And it's always funny whenever there's something that's set in the '80s or the '90s. Every single person that is featured is wearing the coolest clothes, and they all are like obsessed with all the fashions of the day and the fads and the music and everything. And people will listen to everything from like 90s grunge rock to like hip hop, or the same thing with like the 80s thing. It's like there's like all these styles that are all kind of coming together. I'm like, nope, nobody ever did that. There's no way that any kid could go to the Gap and get what would be like designer clothes for that era and be able to afford it, especially when, as far as I can tell, none of them have like really any job or anything like that. I mean, how much allowance cash are they pulling in? But I mean, so it ends up becoming this sort of like nostalgic, not real 80s sort of aesthetic of the 80s unto itself.
Well, it worked on me because I thought, oh my God, I remember that. Oh my God, I remember that.
Well, I guess you lived through it more consciously than I did.
Yeah.
So I was like a very young child. So maybe I'm wrong about this.
It's like, yeah, remember when you could just take your bikes and go away for days and your parents didn't care? Yup, sure do.
Oh, I thought that was like a Midwestern thing. I didn't think that was necessarily a product of the time. I remember not locking my bike when I lived in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I'd just go somewhere and leave it outside.
Yeah, you can still do that in many places in Wisconsin.
I was gonna say, I kind of wonder if it's still like that. If I went back to the city I grew up in, how many people still don't lock their doors?
Yeah.
Like, could you just like wait until somebody goes away to work and then just go into their house and hang out?
Yeah.
I got to cut that out. Somebody's going to do it and then they're going to like come back and be like,
it's like, I tried 15 doors and 13 of them were open. No, that's fine. I mean, there's a thing that I refer to as a Wisconsin break-in, which has happened to me a couple of times, where like a friend of mine will come in and then out of courtesy, like lock the door on their way out, not knowing that I don't have keys.
Yeah.
With me.
So it's a Wisconsin lockout then more than a break-in.
Yeah, right. Because nobody takes anything but yeah, no, I leave my garage open in case the neighbor needs a shovel or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you know your neighbors, but I mean, there could be just some random person that comes back into town.
Yep.
I also kind of wonder, it's like if I were to go back and visit, how much could I get away with before the police would catch up? This sort of crime wave. What dastardly villain. It would take like a week before the papers caught wind of it.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, somebody on nextdoor.com is definitely going to be like, hey, I had my bike parked out by the side of my garage and somebody moved it to the side of my house.
They inflated my tires and they oiled my chain. I just wanted to know who I should buy a beer for because I really appreciate it. Thanks.
You're not wrong. It's just so wholesome. I think we said everything we needed to say.
All right. Sounds like it's a very short episode for today, but I think we're going to leave you with that. Considering that the last one was so incredibly long, I think it's appropriate. So we'll cue the outro music.
Cue the outro.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening. If you have any comments or suggestions of things you'd like to hear us babble on about, please feel free to contact us at composerish@gmail.com. Until next time, keep on writing.